Tonight, the end of mask mandates in the province.
It's wonderful to have the choice to not wear it.
It's been a little bit anxiety-provoking for me.
Masking is no longer required in most indoor settings, including schools, salons, and restaurants. Some saying it's about time, others not quite ready to ditch the covering. Plus,
the spontaneity of just having lunch together like we did today.
adapting back to office life. A big day for many employees as they return to the office after 2 years of working from home. And
all of a sudden now we are being told that Canada doesn't want us anymore.
after coming to Toronto as refugees years ago, a group of Somali youths is now fighting deportation. We'll have their story. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. Well, for the first time in nearly 2 years, you have a choice whether to mask up in most indoor settings. Now, Ontario lifting the mask mandate today in places like schools, gyms, restaurants, and salons. Our Tali Ricci has more on how people are adjusting to the change.
Hello. On this first school day of spring, it was also the first time some kids ever came to school without wearing a mask.
So I can see Elijah's smile.
That's what she told me, so her friends could see her smile.
Those choosing to keep a mask on say it makes them feel
protected, This is not 100% that.
Government and health officials say public health indicators have improved enough to remove mask rules, which have also been lifted in other places across Canada. The Toronto District School Board had asked for more time, concerned about low vaccination rates in kids and the risk to those who are vulnerable. But the province rejected that request.
In terms of our household, we have a heart patient at home, and that's why we're just going to keep it on for a little bit and see how things go.
And just it's softer now, right?
In addition to schools, masks will also no longer be required in retail settings and most other indoor public spaces, including salons.
It's wonderful to have the choice to not wear it.
It's just based on personal comfort level. If you don't want to, then we're cool with that. If you want us in a face covering, we're happy to do it as well too.
Michael Shire says as a stylist and colorist, there are benefits to being able to see someone's full face.
With anyone who wants to wear shorter pieces, I know exactly where on the face that needs to sit now in order to make it look amazing for her.
Restaurant workers say these are some of the things they won't miss.
Talking to the customers, and half the time I kept pulling it down, and they couldn't hear me, and I couldn't hear them. It was kind of annoying.
Hot and muffled and repeating yourself constantly.
Modeling by the province's COVID-19 Science Advisory Table shows cases and hospitalizations could go up. But this infectious disease expert says we're in a much better position to handle that now.
What's important for us to realize is that regardless of what we do, we're going to be seeing waves of cases, and this happens with all respiratory viruses. Our goal at this point is not to stop all transmission, is to prevent severe disease. And we have excellent tools for that now, including the vaccine, but also therapeutics.
Places like public transit, healthcare facilities, and long-term care homes will continue to have mask mandates in place until the end of April. The head of Ontario's COVID-19 Science Advisory Table does still recommend that you wear a mask if you're somewhere that's indoors and crowded. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
It's also a big day for many businesses and workplaces across the GTA. After almost 2 years of work from home, many welcome back employees to the office this morning, and that includes Toronto City Hall. Talia Ricci, Greg Ross reports.
This is a very exciting day at Vetster.
Vetster is a company that connects pet owners and veterinarians virtually. Today, they had the largest group of employees in the office at one time since opening a year and a half ago. Not including the furry friends, they had about 25% of their total workforce.
But we're slowly bringing things back now and looking to bring more people back into the office over the next couple of weeks.
It was an opportunity for several of the employees to meet face-to-face for the first time.
Today I met 3 coworkers for the first time after seeing their face on Zoom for so long.
You're seeing the full person and not just maybe a tiny face.
1, 2, 3.
At City Hall, Mayor Tory helped welcome back city staff to the office.
I think that we're ready. I certainly am ready to see us, move much more strongly back in the direction of normal, and I know the city is ready.
Last week, the city reopened a number of in-person counter services at City Hall. Starting today, there are no restrictions when it comes to public access.
Starting today, members of the public will be able to fully access the public areas beyond the counters at City Hall and at the civic centres, and that will include visiting with the mayor and with the councillors, which, again, we welcome that.
Also, starting this week, council and committee meetings will no longer be exclusively held over Zoom.
They're transitioning to a hybrid model, which will continue to allow for virtual participation, but which will also resume people being in person.
Those are the kind of options that many businesses are offering employees. Vetster is allowing their staff to choose how many days they want to work from the office.
It is definitely going to be in stages, and we'll have some people who choose to work remotely permanently. We'll have other people who want to be in the office 5 days a week.
And even though pandemic mandates have been lifted, here at Vetster, they're still taking precautions.
We have a vaccination policy in place. Masks are currently optional, but we do encourage people for social distancing still.
They say if things do take a turn for the worse and the city starts to lock down again, they'll have no problem quickly transitioning back to working remotely. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
And we have some breaking news from Ottawa tonight. CBC News has learned the Liberal government and NDP are in talks to strike a historic deal. That would keep the Liberal minority government in power for 3 more years. That means we will not have a federal election until 2025. Now, the so-called confidence and supply agreement still needs to support the support of NDP MPs who are meeting late tonight. It would see the NDP back the Liberals in confidence votes. In return, the Liberals will follow through on some elements of national pharmacare and dental care programs that have long been promoted by the NDP. Now, host of Power and Politics, Vasi Capellos, broke this story. You can read more on our website, cbc.ca/news. All right, now to provincial politics, and the Ontario government is introducing new legislation to protect international border crossings from disruptions. This move comes after the blockade of the Ambassador Bridge delayed billions of dollars worth of goods. Lisa Shank has this story.
For 6 days, Canada's busiest trade route was at a standstill. The Ambassador Bridge in Windsor blocked. Auto plants on both sides of the border either had to close or scale back production.
Our auto sector took huge losses, as did agriculture and many other industries. And Ontario's reputation as a reliable place to invest took a hit.
That's why Ontario's Solicitor General tabled legislation today to allow police to respond without invoking a state of emergency.
We scoped it very narrowly, and it will have no impact on the right for peaceful, lawful, and temporary protests.
The measures include suspending driver's licenses and vehicle permits, seizing license plates of people involved in illegal blockades, and removing and storing objects that are used in a blockade. Meanwhile, Premier Doug Ford was on a trade mission in Washington, reassuring officials and business leaders it won't happen again.
We're all about freedom of speech, but there's a proper way of doing that.
But that trip isn't going over well with the Liberal House Leader.
I'm not sure that the Premier going down to Washington will come close to repairing the damage that was done over 2 weeks. He abandoned the people of the City of Ottawa. He abandoned the people of Windsor.
The province is also giving more training at the police college, and after tow truck operators refuse to help clear the Ottawa protest, Ontario is buying its own to dismantle any future blockades. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now with a first look at the forecast. Colette, no complaints today. I was out earlier with just a light sweater before it started cooling down a little bit.
Yeah, I think our complaint department was able to kind of shut down a little bit for today. The first full day of spring as it came in yesterday. And, you know, we really saw great conditions until we got into the afternoon, and then just some clouds that sort of pushed in. But lots of areas getting up to 13 degrees around the GTHA and into St. Catharines as well, and even warmer there for Windsor. We had some cooler numbers up towards Sudbury and that region into northeastern Ontario. Didn't quite make it there, but elsewhere we saw the milder conditions. conditions. Now, we are going to be seeing this sort of line of showers kind of stretching, maybe even at times impacting Sarnia towards Goderich, over towards London and the Niagara region in the overnight hours this evening now and through the overnight, but then it kind of dissipates. So it will disappear before it really brings much in terms of anything into the GTA. We'll have sun to start, but then we will begin to see that increase in cloudiness. And what really becomes important is what happens overnight Tuesday into Wednesday morning, a chance for some freezing rain. I'm going to have more on that coming up, Kelda, but just know slightly cooler tomorrow, that daytime high up to 7 degrees.
Thanks so much, Colette. Well, talks aimed at ending Russia's invasion of Ukraine have resumed. A Ukrainian negotiator says top officials held a 90-minute video session, and further discussions have now split into working groups. Now, as the talks continue, so does the bombing. A residential area in the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, was rocked by a Russian missile strike. It hit a shopping mall and several homes were also damaged. At least 8 people were killed. And the strategic port city of Mariupol continues to see some of the worst bombardments of the war. It's estimated 90% of buildings are damaged or destroyed. Early today, Ukraine rejected Russia's offer of a safe passage out in exchange for the surrender of that city. And a Mississauga mosque was the scene of a violent intrusion this weekend. Police arrested the attacker, and shaken worshippers are thankful that no one was seriously hurt. As Ali Shiasan reports, the mosque is now trying to make sure something like this does not happen again.
Prayers have resumed at Dar al-Tawhid, and children are attending the school attached to the mosque, all after a terrifying intrusion on Saturday.
Any acts of violence, generally speaking, are quite disturbing, but especially for my wife and I, we've got about 3 children and both of our kids attend the school. Whether this happens at a mosque, church, or anywhere, right, it should be concerning to anyone.
A man walked in during morning prayers, wielding an axe and spraying a can of fire extinguisher.
It was very hard, to breathe, for the eyes, for the lungs, for the throat. So the thing that rushed to my mind at that time is that, oh, does this guy have a gun?
Thankfully, some of the congregants apprehended the intruder.
One of the young men, that attending, the prayer, immediately noticed the axe in his hand and knocked it off to the ground. And then everybody kind of jumped on him and pinned him to the ground.
And the police weren't far behind. Mohammed Moiz Omar is unknown to anyone at the mosque and is now facing multiple charges, including assault with a weapon, uttering threats, and mischief to religious property.
Couldn't really believe it. I mean, you hear about these stories of people walking into places of worship and committing acts of violence and things like that, but you never really imagine it would happen to the place that you go to.
With the investigation into what's believed to be a hate-motivated crime underway, Imam Ibrahim Hindi is looking at increasing security in and around the building.
We're coming on to the month of Ramadan in a few days here, and that's when we have more people coming to the mosque, and so we're going to be more vigilant, and we're hoping the other mosques in the area will do the same as well.
You have to run lockdown drills. You're looking at beefing up security at this peaceful place. How disappointing or troubling is that you have to resort to something like that?
It's very frustrating. It's sad. You have to figure out ways to get people not to kill people or attack people, Lots of emotions. It's also very triggering considering what's happened in other places of worship. But then at the same time, our resolve is there. We're not going to be intimidated. We'll just do what we need to do to increase security and safety. But we're just going to continue with what we've planned. We're not going to stop.
Ali Shiasan, CBC News, Mississauga.
Well, hundreds of Somali youth in Canada have been told they need to leave the country. And many are permanent residents living here in Ontario after coming as refugees. Now, the reason some are now facing deportation comes down to the passport they use to seek asylum. And they're pleading with lawmakers to take another look at the issue. Jessica Ng has their story.
I come from a country, Somalia. It's a war-torn country. We were targeted by a terrorist group. And I lost my dad in there. I lost my older sister in there. I left 2018 March. It was me and my sister who had to run away to Canada. Back in from 2019 December to early 2020, we started getting vacate applications to say that, oh, we're revoking everything back because we found out that the passport you used an entry for is Kenya. They are saying that there's a misrepresentation that we did regarding our claim when we were seeking asylum in Canada.
The civil war in Somalia has made the country a very dangerous place to live. And while many are desperate to escape, seeking asylum can be difficult. The Canadian government, for instance, does not accept Somali passports, leaving some like Ali to falsify the documents in order to escape.
It's all very complex. There's none of them are criminals of any sort whatsoever. They've just used these false passports. The reason why they lied in the first place is they paid a smuggler $15,000 to get them out of the nightmare situation they were in. And he's told them, don't tell them that you're used a Kenyan passport.
Immigration lawyer Paul Deneen has represented dozens of Canadian clients suddenly facing deportation. He says in 2019, deportation orders spiked significantly.
We can plead humanitarian and compassionate ground. Canada is being so generous to the situation in Ukraine, and that's a war that's lasted for 3 weeks. This one's been going for 30 years.
We have contacted our embassies. We have gotten Somali identity documents. Canada is my home, and a lot of the youth are in the same boat as I am. And all of a sudden now we are being told that Canada doesn't want us anymore.
Jessica Ng, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. An Oakville couple says they're living in a nightmare. The tenant living in the downstairs apartment of their investment home is refusing to move out more than 6 months after they sold their property. Kashif and Salma Siddiqui also say the tenant hasn't paid rent since October and that they've been waiting months for a hearing date at Ontario's Backlogged Landlord and Tenant Board. Ryan Jones has their story.
So this is the sales agreement.
It's been 6 months since the Siddiquis sold their rental home on Tack Drive in Mississauga. But since then, they've had to push back the closing date twice.
Upstairs is vacant now, but the downstairs tenant, they refuse to move out and they stop paying rent as well.
Documents filed with the Landlord and Tenant Board show the Siddiquis gave the required 60 days written notice to tenant Alberto Almeida after the sale, slipping it under the front door. They say Almeida agreed to move out when the lease expired at the end of November.
Until the very last day, until 29th of November, they were telling me that they will move out. And then one day before, they just told me that they are not going to move out.
Rent checks provided by Almeida's former wife, who moved out months ago, have since bounced. The Siddiquis also allege Almeida's been verbally abusive and has damaged their property.
Here we have a washer and dryer. As you can see, the doors are missing because they are damaged. And the washer as well.
They say they're owed $10,200 in back rent. On top of all that, now the people who bought the home are threatening to sue due to delays in closing the deal, which stipulated the home would be empty and tenant-free.
I'm too frustrated with this system because I feel helpless. I feel like there is nobody and I'm stuck in the system which left me alone.
The tenant, Almeida, declined to do an interview with CBC Toronto. He previously told the Siddiquis he was having trouble finding a place to live because of the pandemic. This paralegal says the situation's unlikely to be resolved anytime soon. The Landlord and Tenant Board is backlogged, beset by months of delays after shutting down for 5 months at the start of the pandemic.
You cannot rely on the Landlord Tenant Board. It has failed us. To say the LTB is a train wreck isn't quite being fair to wrecked trains. It's that bad.
And late today, after we reported on Siddiqui's situation, the board offered them a hearing next week. But the process could still take months to resolve.
I don't want to buy a property and rent it anymore in Ontario.
So long as they can resolve this dispute first. Ryan Patrick Jones, CBC News, Toronto.
Let's go back to Colette now with a look at your full forecast. And Colette, temperatures tomorrow not nearly as mild as today and some wet weather on the way as well.
Yeah, we do, and it could be a little bit tricky in terms of the form that wet weather is going to take. Now, I have put here that we're back to seasonal tomorrow. Well, you know what? We're still a little bit on the mild side, a couple degrees. A normal daytime high for this time of year for Toronto would be 5 degrees. So we'll just be a tiny bit above that. We will see the increase in clouds as our Tuesday kind of wears on and we get deeper into those afternoon hours. But it's overnight Tuesday into Wednesday morning. That's when that mixed precipitation may come in a rather slippery form, especially north and kind of northeast of the city. That's where we have the chance that it could be a little bit extended. So something to be keeping in mind for the Wednesday morning commute. Now, we're just talking about this band along that warm front of that showery activity that just sort of dissipates as we go towards the morning hours. We will have sunshine to begin, some high thin cloud in place around the Golden Horseshoe, but then increase in cloudiness, and you're certainly going to have that cloudiness and even a few showers earlier as that moves into southwestern Ontario, and then you get into that risk again into the afternoon hours. It's mostly cloud early and then the risk of the showers. Here we go into early Wednesday morning. Warmer temperatures mean rainfall back to the southwest, but this is where we get into that mix. When you get some of that warmer air kind of overriding some cooler air at the surface, that's when we're more likely to get into a freezing rain situation. So watching that very carefully, even some freezing drizzle possible towards the lakeshore. The closer you get to the lakeshore, the more decreased that chances that it would be in that form. Into the afternoon Wednesday, kind of that mix, mostly rain comes around through Toronto. And then even into Thursday and Friday, we have some unsettled conditions. So we'll still have the chance for getting in at least some intermittent showers as we go through. So cooler on Wednesday, at least the temperatures pop back up by the time we get towards Thursday. Overnight, this is how they look. And by the way, that is a -1 towards London, where you could see a little bit of mixing at times. Mostly it's that showery activity. The wind direction keeping your temperature down a little bit there, Chatham, Kent, and all that cloud cover coming in. It'll be good start tomorrow morning as we back off to partly cloudy skies overnight tonight, although that allows things to cool down there, Markham and Oshawa. Tomorrow, yeah, we'll heat up. Just don't compare it to today, and it's going to be just fine. Into Wednesday, though, that's the day to watch before things kind of pick back up into Thursday, Kelda.
Thanks so much, Colette. Finally tonight, it is now officially spring, but take a look at this tribute to winter. That is Edmontonian DJ Haymack doing a live set from Banff National Park as the backdrop. And the coolest part, look at this, the set was done from a moving dog sled. Haymack said he'd never been on a dog sled before and called the experience unreal. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6, and I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.